These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are Gabi.com. Gabi takes the pain out of shopping for insurance. More info at Gabi.com/Thom. Teeth, Smarter Pet Dental Health. More info at teethhealth.com, code Thom. HelloFresh, delivering fresh ingredients and mouthwatering recipes. More info at hellofresh.com, code Thom. Bowl and Branch, crafted for the common good. More information at bowlandbranch.com, code Thom. ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More info at expressvpn.com/Thom. And CB Distillery, CBD for sleeping. More info at cbdistillery.com, code Thom.
Our book for the Thom Hartmann Book Club today is A Nation Forged by Crisis, A New American History by Jay Sexton. And I'm reading from the introduction. This is page 9. The quest for national security and global power, America's shifting position in the international economy, and fluctuations in immigration have made the United States the nation that it is today. Americans' foreign relations have been conditioned its history not only in their cumulative effects over the long haul, but also as a result of their volatility. In periods of crisis, America's position in the world has lurched in unexpected directions. For as inexorable as the rise of the United States appears in retrospect, there have been contingent moments in which the very existence of our nation was up for grabs. This is the essence of crisis. The world turned upside down, the known replaced by the unknown, panic reigning as people struggle to maintain their balance and shifts in the very ground beneath their feet. It came with a speed and ferocity that left men dazed, New York Times correspondent Elliot Bell wrote of Wall Street's catastrophic collapse in October of 1929. Quote, the market seemed like an insensate thing that was wreaking a wild and pitiless revenge upon those who thought to master it, end quote. Crises are contagious, spreading like viruses from one realm to another. It's not without reason that the word crisis was associated with medical conditions and health scares in the 19th century. Each of the periods under consideration in this book were less a singular crisis than a set of interlinked crises. A political crisis could trigger an economic panic, which in turn could intensify social conflict, and so on. As these pandemics spread through the body politic, crisis itself was normalized, becoming an almost accepted characteristic of an age. Just as foreign crises have spread to the United States, domestic ones have spilled across its borders, unsettling foreign countries and peoples, as well as reconfiguring America's connections to the world. Consider the fateful winter of secession that followed the 1860 election of Abraham Lincoln. The crisis over slavery that divided the Union into warring sections that led to a series of sharp reversals in America's position in the global system. The foreign capital that had rushed into the roaring American economy in the preceding decades suddenly began to flee. Indeed, more capital left the United States in 1860 to 1862 than came into it. Also a once-in-a-century occurrence. One of the world's most valuable commodities and America's largest exports, Southern cotton, was confined to the ports of the Confederacy as a result of Richmond's ill-fated diplomatic strategy, leading to unemployment and social unrest in the British textile town of Lancashire. The most unexpected reversal was how the national security that the United States had attained after the war against Mexico in the 1840s was suddenly imperiled, with European powers encroaching once again upon the Western Hemisphere. Meanwhile, the Confederate emissaries across the Atlantic were in search of alliance with Britain. Our country, Secretary of State William Seward lamented in early 1861, after having expelled all European powers from the continent, now threatened to relapse into an aggravated form of its colonial experience, and like India, Turkey, China, and Italy, become the theater of transatlantic intervention and rapacity. A wider view of American history that looks beyond the nation's borders brings into focus not only the migration patterns, economic flows, and international rivalries that have connected the United States to the world, but also those rare moments in which the very existence of the nation was in question. Perhaps none was more pregnant with implications than the autumn of 1877, when the fate of the Patriots' bid for independence hung in the balance. Having proclaimed their independence to the world the previous 4th of July, their cause had stalled on the battlefield and in the diplomatic courts of the old world. I think the game is pretty near up, Washington privately confessed at year's end. To accomplish their independence is not quite so easy as to declare it, the British philosopher Jeremy Bentham haughtily remarked. But then a series of events forever changed the course of modern history. The stunning Patriot victory at the Battle of Saratoga in October, the drafting of the Articles of Confederation in November that, for all its limitations, further demonstrated the political resolve of the Americans. And most of all, the alliance signed with France in February 1778, which provided the Patriots with the resources, military assistance, and naval power that ultimately tipped the scales in their favor. There are comparable Saratoga moments in other crises in U.S. history, as we shall see. These contingent moments played out in their own distinctive ways, but are joined by a common denominator that has been curiously forgotten in our age of U.S. global power. Foreign states and people have played decisive roles in the critical moments of American history. As we make our way through our own era of global instability, in an unprecedentedly interconnected world, there's perhaps no more important lesson from the past to keep in mind. Crisis may beget crisis, Franklin Roosevelt said, as his administration transitioned from battling the Great Depression to entering the Second World War. But the progress underneath does not wholly halt. It does go forward, end quote. Like so many of Roosevelt's public statements, this one reveals a truth even as it conceals others. The United States came out on the other side of its greatest crises as a stronger and more efficiently organized nation, as Roosevelt suggested. The process of mobilizing resources to counter threats catalyzed innovations in political economy, such as the creation of a national financial system during the Civil War, and the economic reforms of the New Deal. The book is A Nation Forged by Crisis by Jay Sexton.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Going on with Trump's refusal to acknowledge the election. We'll get to those in just a minute. I want to discuss, should we forgive and excuse the Trump humpers out there? It's just, please just give him a little time. Not going there. I have a pile of news for you. In our third hour, Margie Margul is going to be with us. There is a huge win in Florida for the rights of nature. This could be a big step toward protecting our environment. Keep in mind, Donald Trump has gutted over 100 different rules or regulations that protect you, me, and our environment from being poisoned by industrial activity, from being poisoned by giant corporations and billionaires who want to just pour their coal or their waste or whatever it may be, into our environment, into our rivers, into our waters, into our air. And, here we are. But to the two things that I think might be going on, and I think this is pretty important to note, and I'd love to get your take on this and what you think the end game is here, because it sure looks to me like every single one of these challenges that Donald Trump is making to the vote are doomed. I mean, in no cases, they found one guy in Nevada who couldn't legally vote, who voted. They found so far one case of so-called election fraud. And we don't have the details on that yet. You know, maybe he's a felon, maybe who knows? But one case out of 50 million votes cast, almost 160 million votes cast. So, you know, they're clearly not going to have success in this. Why is Donald Trump dragging this out? One of the main narratives that we find in the corporate media is that the people in the White House are just afraid to talk to him. He's having a psychotic break. Seriously. I mean, there is actually, you know, there's this theory that he's going nuts. And in fact, Hallie Jackson today on NBC said that people in the White House are trying to get him to accept that. And, you know, they're leaking and things like that. But, I mean, you know, this is bizarre. Is it that he's too mentally ill to deal with this, that he's had some kind of psychotic break? Mike Pence is getting on a plane for Florida today. He's going to be down there until the weekend. He's getting the hell out of town. Wouldn't you? So to boil this down, I think that there are two pieces to Trump's strategy. And either one could be independent of the other, or it might be both. The first is that as long as he doesn't concede the election, as long as he doesn't say, yeah, Biden won, he can continue to raise money. The election is still considered live, and under federal election law, he can continue to reach out and raise money. Now, keep in mind, this is a guy who has raised over $1 billion for his own reelection campaign. He announced his reelection campaign the day after